After Blues' triumph, Raptors could become latest team with title breakthrough this decade. The Blues became the latest team to win its first title in franchise history this decade. Time is running out with Street Blues' triumph. Of course, DC area fans can happily cite the previous NHL team to turn the first ever trick, as the Washington Capitals got off the schneid just last year, after having been established 44 years previously. In 2012, the decade began with the Chicago Blackhawks winning it all for the first time in 49 years, while the Boston Bruins, who fell to the Blues in Wednesday's Game 7, can at least console themselves with the fact that they halted a 39-year skid in 2011. For their part, the Raptors are hoping to stand atop the NBA for the first time since starting play in 1995. They can take heart, the last chance this decade to win a first-ever title in one of the four major sports leagues. Apologies to Mills, but it didn't even start play until 1996, so it seems fair to leave it out of this exercise. Will come in baseball. 7 MLB franchises have yet to win a World Series, although it's only been a two-decade drought thus far for the Tampa Bay Rays, who began play in 1998. In a somewhat similar, before locals start grabbing pitchforks and heading to the Post's DC headquarters, it's well worth mentioning that Washington's overall want of a World Series winner goes back to 1925, the year after the Senators brought the only title thus far to the nation's capital. So baseball that version of the Senators moved to Minnesota in 1960 and, as the Twins, won it all in 1987 and 1991. Washington immediately. The other MLB franchises also still seeking a World Series triumph include the San Diego Padres, founded in 1969, Milwaukee Brewers, founded in 1969 as the Seattle Pilots before moving to Wisconsin a year later, the Seattle Mariners 1977, and the Colorado Rockies 1993. They can look for inspiration from the breakthrough this decade by the Houston Astros, who in 2017 won the first World Series in their 56 seasons to that point. In addition, finally, we have the NFL, which got the decade off to a bang with the New Orleans Saints winning their first and as yet only Super Bowl in 2010. 4 years later, the Philadelphia Eagles also used this decade to remind themselves of what it feels like to be a champion. In 2018, so the Raptors have both a lot to live up to and some reason to feel like their timing is perfect, even if they have to wait until Sunday's Game 7 to seal the deal. Heck, they can, and if it doesn't work out, well, there are always the 2020s. Of course, read more. Related slideshow, Best of the Stanley Cup Final provided by Iman.
Raindrop, truck top, smoking, no cooking the hot pot. Fucking on your bitch, yeah, that.